All right. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saima Jadoon. I am one of the vice principals here at J. Clark Richardson in Ajax with the Durham District School Board. And I'm also one of the vice chairs or co-chairs of the Muslim Educators Network of Durham. And we are super excited for today's workshop, which is geared towards our students here within the DDSB, intermediate and senior students. And today's workshop, please excuse me for a minute here as I try to navigate my lovely, as I say this, I'm trying to move as we move along. Sorry. So today's workshop is a storytelling student workshop presented by the National Council of Canadian Muslims and, of course, our Muslim Educators Network of Durham within the DDSB. So we are going to start off with the land acknowledgement. And Ms. Nabi, you are on air. Is that correct?
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, I am.
Assalam. I'm going to read the land acknowledgement, and Ms. Nabi, if you could follow with the next human rights statement, okay?
You got it.
Thanks, my friend. All right. So the Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships, both historic and modern, with territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. And now I'd like to pass it over to Ms. Nabi, who's one of our executive members, to read our human rights statement.
The Durham District School Board is committed to learning environments that are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination while placing human rights and equity at the center.
Thank you. So today I'm super, super excited on behalf of the Muslim Educators Network to welcome Janna from the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Janna, as you can see, is NCCM's education coordinator. She has previously worked as a teacher for Syrian refugee students within the Niagara School Board and on advocating for women's educational success as an assistant coordinator at the YWCA Hamilton. Janna has a range of experience in education programs, including in experiential learning, administration, and computer programs. She is passionate about human rights, equity, and inclusion, and she is committed to creating safe learning spaces for all students and equipping them with the tools to identify and push back against systematic inequalities that affect their quality of learning. She graduated from Brock University with an honors degree in English and is currently completing her final year of Teachers College. Yay! I'm so happy when I hear people going to Teachers College. During her time at the university, she has served as president of Brock's Muslim Student Association and vice president of the Brock East African Students Association. So without further ado, I welcome Janna Fardos.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that enthusiastic introduction. Thank you so much, Saima. I'm so sorry. That introduction was probably so long. But I'm so happy to be speaking to this group today, especially seeing as though you're doing so much work for Muslim representation, for yourself, for your Muslim peers. And I know a little bit about how that feels, being at MSA, but I only got into that in uni. So to see that you guys are doing this in high school at this age is amazing. In high school, I wanted to keep quiet and I really was uncomfortable with my Muslim identity. So you guys are owning that. And alhamdulillah, that's an amazing thing to see. It's inspiring even to me. So thank you. And I'm so happy to be here. So let me pull up my slide deck and we can get the show on the road. Salam everyone in the chat. You guys are so engaging already. I know we're gonna have a great time. Okay. Let me know, Saima, if you can see my slide. All good?
Not yet, home slice. Hang on 1 second. Maybe because I've pinned you. Let me unpin you here. Yes, no I problem. Can see your slide now. Yes. So you would just have to go to present mode. Can the rest of you, Michelle, can you see it, my friend?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. I'm gonna unpin you because all I see is your face then.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about storytelling. And it's often not an avenue we choose when we talk about, Islamophobia, or when we talk about even just affirming our Muslim identities. But I want to show you sort of the power of storytelling. It's going to involve, taking autonomy, taking agency in changing the narrative of who we are, especially within our schools. So let's see what that looks like. And you all have already made your land claim. That's great. I just wanted to go further to point out that one thing we do at NCCM, we're working every day to disrupt Islamophobia, to disrupt discrimination against Muslims, and we're in this constant, fight for equity and equality, right? So we can't involve ourselves in just one type of equity. We have to be sharing our space. We have to acknowledge the land that we do our work on is Indigenous land, and make sure that we're collaborating with them when we talk about equity. So that's one thing we like to do. And also, just a little bit about me is one thing I just want to point out is my email, and I'll have Saima hopefully share that email address with you. You can contact me anytime with any questions at all you'll have after the session, and also just in general. Since you guys are out there doing the work as young Muslim leaders, if you need any help from NCCM, we are more than happy to give you our time. All right, so let's talk a little bit about stories. And since we're all working in the space of affirming Muslim identities, it's IHM, Islamic Heritage Month, so it's a great time for us. It gives us this avenue, this pocket of time to really, affirm ourselves, represent ourselves to our non-Muslim classmates and to our teachers, right? One thing we want to point out, though, is at NCCM, we really want to encourage that you try to take what you do in IHM during this time and try to include it throughout the whole year. We want to continue affirming and representing ourselves throughout the entire year. We don't really just want to situate ourselves in one month. So it's IHM, great time. And sometimes, maybe not you guys because you're already doing this work, but myself growing up in the high school, I really did not want to include my Muslim identity within my classroom. So oftentimes when I was sharing the story of my life to my peers, it looked like, a linear line. Sometimes we tell ourselves to other people in a way that might be more palatable, might be more, acceptable, considering what climate we're currently in. And a lot of the cultures that I dealt with in school, they weren't really accepting of Muslim identity. So, me just taking that in subconsciously and then, writing out my Muslim identity is what I used to do and what a lot of students still do, right? So that's one thing I wanted to point out. So oftentimes, when I do talk about myself, or when I did, I would make it more, accessible, more palatable. Like, yes, I'm an educator, future educator. I travel, I teach. So those are things that, people usually like to hear. But sometimes we do take our Muslim identity. So I want to talk about a little bit about why that happens. And I want to, talk about certain myths that exist about Muslims that maybe discourage us to really affirm our identity, to, be who we are, religiously speaking. And I want to do that through an anti-racist and anti-Islamophobic lens. So just give it a lens, a different perspective maybe of how to look at these myths. And since you guys are Muslim ambassadors for your school, that's a really heavy role. So sometimes we're missing the language or the knowledge to really talk about how to affirm and represent ourselves properly. So I'm hoping today I can provide you with some of that. I am also hoping to use storytelling to show you that it can be a great strategy to teach your peers about effective allyship, not just, performative allyship. And finally, just have a better understanding of the lived experiences of Muslims in Canada. Okay, so I'm sure you guys are all tech geniuses, but again, I will ask for a little bit of engagement today. So use the chat box, unmute yourselves. You guys are already great at that. Jump in whenever you want to talk, and do not feel free to interrupt me. And also, of course, community guidelines. Anything we talk about today, it should come from a place of understanding, respect. And one thing I'm particularly interested in is hearing about your personal experiences. So use a lot of I statements. Sometimes we are sort of discouraged to use I statements and personal experiences, but here it really matters. So feel free to share. So let's do a little icebreaker. I've spoken quite a bit, and I do want to get to know you in the small time that I have. So I want you all to reflect on the sentence first and then finish it afterwards. So it goes, if you really knew me, you'd know that blank. So just to, put into context, sometimes in certain places. So maybe think about yourself in the classroom environment, thinking about, some of the peers that you're around. In your head, if you're just thinking, if they really knew me, what would they know about me? And you can fill in the blank any way you want. You can put it in the chat. It doesn't have to be a very deep realization, anything really.
As we're waiting for answers, can you do me a favor, Janna? On your screen, it should say stop sharing or hide. Can you hit hide?
There we go.
Beauty.
Perfect.
There we go. Thanks.
So here, let me give you an example. So one thing people don't often know about me is I would say if you really knew me, you would know that I'm very sensitive. So oftentimes I'm good at putting on a face to show, like I'm calm or I'm easygoing, but actually deep down inside, I have a really big sensitive heart and I am touched by a lot of things. If you put on a sad movie, I will cry. And I'm finally proud of it. So that's just one thing. You can answer it that way, or you can use your Muslim identity to answer it. I'm just gonna wait for who breaks the silence here. Juan, I know you have something.
Sorry. If you really knew me, you'd know that I'm an overthinker. I overthink a lot, and not a lot of people know that. So, yeah.
Could I ask a follow-up question, if that's okay?
Go ahead.
Do you not tell people a lot because it's something that you don't, think that they'd like about you?
I think so, like that aspect of it, but also like if I tell them, I'd overthink about telling them. Does that make sense? It's like a bit of a cycle.
No, I totally understand that. I'm the person who leaves like a friend encounter, like friends I've known for years, and I'll still overthink about the whole interaction, thinking if I said anything wrong. I feel that.
I get you.
Anyone else?
If you knew me, I love traveling, so that's kind of a little bit about me.
Oh, where was the last destination you visited?
Niagara on Sunday.
Nice. I heard another voice jump in.
There is a lot in the
you
chat.
know that I want.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you really knew me, you'd know that I want justice for all.
Okay. Perfect.
If you really knew me, you'd know that I'm really energetic and bubbly around people I'm close to.
So you're more introverted around people you're not close to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I go completely mute around people I don't know, and they'll never know that I'm actually very extroverted. Okay, so I think we can kind of get the idea that oftentimes we will hide certain things about ourselves. Whether or not there's like a real conscious reason behind it, sometimes we just, subconsciously do it. But oftentimes it's sort of because of thinking about the judgment we might receive or how this trait is perceived by other people. And a lot of times young students will do that about their Muslim identity. They'll really hide it. They'll hide that they fast for 30 days because a lot of the times it's just not accepted, right? So let's talk about why stories matter and how they're going to help anyone who feels, hesitant to claim their Muslim identity. How is that really going to help them claim it? So I like this quote. I can't think of the person who it's by, but it is an African proverb, and it goes, not until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. So it took me a while to sort of wrap my head around it because I'm a very slow reader, learner, like really at everything. I take my time. But when I took a little bit to read it through, I thought it was really an amazing quote because, yes, of course, lions can't write, but the whole point is that there's an interaction, right, between a lion and a hunter. And we will always sort of see through the hunter's perspective, through the hunter's eyes, and that hunter can really describe the lion in any way he or she wants to. So we'll never know the full story. We'll never know the lion's side. So one way storytelling can help people, take back the narrative and have some power is finally seeing their perspective on something. Okay, so you're all students. You're all representing your high schools, and you're all, mashallah, Muslim ambassadors. So I want to ask you a really honest question, and I'm hoping, you can be as open as possible. So as a student, do you remember a time when you felt meaningfully represented in classroom literature? You've all taken, English classes at this point, right? Do you remember a time where you were meaningfully represented? You really connected with, whatever book was being read? whatever book you had to write an essay on? And if so, how did that make you feel? And by the way, if the answer is no, I'd also like to know why and a little bit more about your experience.
Can I go? I would say that as of yet, I haven't felt fully represented. If anything, I feel misrepresented, especially like in English classes or like social studies. I just feel like a lot of stereotypes are reinforced through those texts, even though it shouldn't be. And like, especially as the only Muslim or like one of the only Muslims, it's really hard to defend. And then when you're a student, right, it almost seems like you're not credible enough.
You brought up a lot of very heavy and important points. Yeah, feeling like you're the only Muslim person, so you automatically have to be like the spokesperson for Islam, when oftentimes we don't have all the knowledge, right? Is there a text that specifically made you feel like that you could remember? And if not, it's okay, but I'm just curious.
Not like specifically. Yeah, no.
No worries. Perfect. Anyone else?
So I'm actually going to talk about, so I was an English teacher about 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And prior to the 3 or 4 years, I remember when the Kite Runner came out. And this was like at least 8 years ago or whatnot, or 7 years ago. And being able to teach students, a book about somebody across the world that I can understand that some things I couldn't relate to, but some things for sure, even small things. And I'm going to be really honest with you. As I was reading through this with my class, and I'm going to be very open and honest, there was no Muslims in my class. And we were reading this book, being able to kind of walk them through, like when the word inshallah came up, right? What does this mean? And trying to make them understand how it's part of our language. When, as Muslims, when we speak to one another, to say inshallah, right, or mashallah, and speaking to them and sharing, I'll share a quick story, teaching them that inshallah means God willing. And the kids, I'm like, let's use it in a sentence. So then the kids picked up on it, and sure enough, a few days later when they had a quiz, they were like, inshallah, Miss Jadoon cancels it, right? And I was laughing because they understood the meaning behind the word. But being able, even as a Muslim teacher, to come into an environment where it was very hard for these students to relate to the characters, to be able to connect in a small way, made a difference for me. So I can only imagine what it would feel for students who are sitting on that side, right? So I get it. I completely get it.
See, I also read Kite Runner in grade 10, and I totally understand you, because it was really connecting at some parts, since I was only the Muslim, I was the only Muslim in my class too. And then there was a part where they had Shia and Sunni, where some people got really confused about that. And I don't know, but I was trying to explain it to them, but I don't think I really spread the message out, and they just kind of had a really confusion about the whole, kind of two sectors. And I was like, maybe I just gave up the wrong kind of.
No. And you know what? I think what Janna was saying earlier is, just because we're Muslim doesn't mean we know everything about Islam. I might not know half the answers myself, and I'm open about that. That's okay. Exactly. That's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing we're trying to do, right, with these sessions. Even when we have them with, other teachers, we're just trying to give them this base understanding, knowing that Shia and Sunnis are, the major sects of Islam. So you, as a student or someone like you, doesn't feel that pressure. So it's not on you. Definitely not. If there's stuff in the chat, I'm so sorry, I can't see because my screen.
Yeah, there are a lot of students who are engaging, definitely. I know, Sophia, you have your hand up, so you speak, and I'll get ready to respond with some chat answers to you, Janna.
Perfect.
Sure. So basically, I have a project on in my world history class where I have a basic thesis of that Islam is not the reason of war in the world. and I would provide like the different proofs that Islam is a peaceful religion, and I represent. And beside that, like most of the students or girl students in school asks me like why you wear hijab and what's the reason behind it. And also I always represent um, as a Muslim girl, I always represent Muslim women, and I'm trying to give a respectful and meaningful response to them. So yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for doing that. You know, you're trying to create another more safe spaces for other Muslim girls when you do that. But it must feel very pressurizing sometimes. If you're the spokesperson for this stuff, I can definitely empathize with that. So make sure, you know, you take your breaks from that too. But no, like, be proud of yourself. Thank you for taking up that space that way.
Thank you.
Of
So in
course.
the chat, just letting you know, and you can speak as you will in a second, Imran. I see you. But we have a lot of students saying that yes, they've read books, but a lot of them have stereotypes. There was one time I felt meaningfully represented was when we read the book Hair Love, because although it doesn't fully represent myself, it made me feel seen, and I thought that was really nice. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Perfect. Hair Love is the book for Black hair, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes.
It's Black representation. Awesome. And one thing I find often is missing is, you know, the intersectionality of identities. A lot of people I talk to, they're not aware that Black people can also be Muslim, and they often tend to separate the two identities. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Imran, one of our co-chairs for the Muslim Educators Network.
Yeah, I actually, just before I go, I just wanted to thank the speakers and for you guys for organizing this. But I'm 50 years old, and so I just want to relate it to the students that are here. This has been an ongoing thing, so it's heartening to hear that we are seeing literature that actually makes Muslim students feel included in their classrooms. My experience as a student, to be honest, there wasn't a lot. Going through the Scarborough Board of Education for my entire schooling, you know, Muslims back then in history textbooks were called Mohammedans. There was a lot of derogatory terms used towards describing us. And so it is very, for me, again, it's heartening to hear that we've got groups like NCCM, MEND, that are working tirelessly to change this narrative. And we ask our students to be that voice, right? When you see literature out there that doesn't represent you, it's okay to challenge it, bring it forward. And if you don't know how to, call us. Like we will take up that cause, because you know, we want our kids to feel accepted and part of every single classroom in Ontario, and we're going to do our best to support you guys. Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you so much,
Inshallah.
Mr. Saeed.
It's so heartening to hear that. Thank you so much for that message.
He is a principal at one of our elementary schools within the DDSB, for those that don't know.
Wow, thank you. Especially at the admin level, it's so nice to hear someone who is openly supporting, you know, the learning of Muslim students. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone who interacted with this question. We had some great discussion. One thing I always think about in literature is sometimes we are represented. We have those Muslim characters, we have those, you know, Muslim authors, those books, but oftentimes, like I think some of you pointed out in the chat, that sometimes they sort of recirculate stereotypes, or they're not very, you know, they don't have the most relatable Muslim characters. You know, not every Muslim person is coming from a very, you know, a lot of times we see those characters are always coming from like a war-torn background, or they're refugees, but that's not always the case, right? There's such a diversity of who Muslims really are. But that's one thing I see often is missing from literature. And that's just what I wanted to point out. And also sometimes we see books as mirrors and windows, right? So mirrors in the sense that if they are books with good representation, they will reflect ourselves. They will reflect us as, you know, you don't have to be a Muslim student who is, you know, who has experienced so much difficulty or things like that to be taken seriously. You can just, you know, you can be any type of a Muslim student. You don't have to be wearing a hijab to be considered, you know, the Muslim go-to spokesperson. Your knowledge and what you have to say is still valuable, because we all show up in our faith in a variety of ways, right? That's one thing books, if they can offer the most variety in representation, that's usually what we're looking for. Okay, so I quickly want to touch on this slide. I'm sure somewhere in the back of our heads, we're all sort of aware of the lack of, you know, diversity, especially in children's book. books. And it's important because, learning starts at a very young age, especially seeing varieties of identities. It's better for it to start at a young age, because why not, right? So what the study finds is basically, I think it was done actually in the American context, but oftentimes Canadian data doesn't really exist when we talk about this kind of stuff. So we're using American data just to point out to see that 50% of children's books that have been published so far until 2018 are white-based and show white characters only. And then you have 27% of books, they show animals, and then you have some diversity. So animals are even more represented than African Americans and Asian Pacific, Latinx communities, and so on and so forth. And Muslim isn't even on there, right? So it's important to see that there is still such a lack, even in this day and age, in our literature. So, literature holds stories and stories matter. And let's talk about in this context why it really does matter for, disrupting those stereotypes and those cycles of seeing Muslims in negative ways. So storytelling can be a type of resistance. So it's taking back power naturally, because the second one of you start talking about what Muslims really look like, what their lived experience is, you're taking back power from the regular sources we hear or we use to hear about Muslims, right? In popular media, we hear from Fox News. We're always represented in one type of way, usually a negative way. So when we are all here out talking about Muslims, talking about our own lived experience, automatically we're taking back power. We're taking back power from people who shouldn't really have such a big influence in imaging who we are. And also we can use that as a way to dismantle existing myths. So I think it was Sophia who just spoke up, and you're writing an entire essay trying to dismantle the myth that Islam is inherently violent or it's responsible for all the wars in the world. Like, you're using really any opportunity you have, even as a student, to dismantle existing myths. Your essay itself is a resistance storytelling. So that's a perfect example right there. Oftentimes as students, it is difficult even to write an essay like that, and to think, how is this going to be received by my teacher, who has, at the end of the day, more power than me, who could make my education more difficult for me. So if we all have the same knowledge of storytelling as a resistance, the more we do it as a collective, the less pushback we'll receive from educators or teachers, right? And storytelling as liberation. So a really great example of what liberation storytelling looks like is Black Lives Matter, right? So we all experienced COVID, having to stay at home. The only source of entertainment we had was our social media. It was news for some people. And what was happening all across the board, it was Black Lives Matter, it was protests. And I think all of us as a collective saw that movement progress, right? So their entire movement is based on reimagining a future for Black people within America and within the West, reimagining a place where anti-Black racism doesn't exist. That's their storytelling as liberation. They're showing us their goals and their ways of, reimagining countries where, inherent systemic violence against Black people doesn't exist. So storytelling, on the surface, it can seem quite fragile, but actually it is very powerful. And I want to take a second to talk about what Islamophobia looks like in Canada. I'm sure you all are aware, a majority here is Muslim, and we have to see this on a daily basis. But sometimes even ourselves, we can sort of forget because there's a story about Canada being, the more kinder, less racist country than America. So we often forget that even in Canada, there are a lot of events of Islamophobia that take place. We had the Quebec mosque shooting in 2017. I'm not going to go into details. I don't want to trigger anyone, because even as a Muslim as myself, I find it very difficult to continuously see these, storylines on the news. It's really hard, so I get it. I'm not going to go into detail. And especially one that was recent is June 2021, the terrorist attack in London, right? So this is just to show that these events, it is good to remind ourselves about them, because we really see Islamophobia, or we really see the unacceptance, the resistance against accepting Muslim identities within our country as well, and it can be systemic. So let's take a little bit of of time to look at the definition of Islamophobia. Even for myself working at NCCM, we are constantly redefining what Islamophobia is because it keeps changing. It keeps getting progressing in different ways. I used to think Islamophobia growing up was just individual violent acts against Muslims, or individual acts of bullying against Muslim students. For example, like I had a moment where someone once took my hijab off back in I think grade 5. They just ripped my hijab off. So that was sort of my understanding. It was very isolated incidents. That's what Islamophobia looks like. But actually, you can see also it's quite systemic, right? So the word even systemic is it's involved in our systems, and education, the education system is a system, right? So it's even sort of weaved into that. It's involved in our legal system, it's involved in our government systems, right? A good example of that is Bill 21 in Quebec, where you're not, as a teacher or in any government building, able to wear the hijab. So that's more systemic examples of how often our Muslim identity is suppressed, or it's just outright, not accepted in society. And another thing to point out is Islamophobia also affects people who aren't Muslim, but who are perceived to be Muslim. So the Sikh community can attest to the fact that they experience a lot of Islamophobia as well, because again, there's this sort of story or stereotype that circulates about Muslims that we're all a certain shade of brown. We all look slightly Middle Eastern. And if we have a head covering, right away, we're Muslim. And Sikhs fall under that, stereotype or that definition of a Muslim. So oftentimes they'll experience what we experience. So it's a very good, important example, not a good example, but an important example of how storytelling, how stereotypes is so, it's like this tool for Islamophobia, and it's a tool for hate. And it allows, hate to be targeted at certain people. So the more we know that, the better we can, help ourselves, support ourselves, and also other people who experience it, who may not be Muslim. So again, Islamophobia is systemic. I think we all know that. But one good thing to look at always is stats or statistics, so we don't rely so much on opinion. And factually, we can see that from 2014 moving onwards, there's a steady incline for hate crimes, right? Until 2017, huge incline of hate crimes against Muslims. And this is reported, these are the reported Muslim hate crimes, right? So think about the many hate crimes that aren't reported. Think about the times that maybe you and I experienced hate crimes and we just didn't report them because maybe we didn't feel like, the legal system would really help us or anyone would really care.
Janna, sorry to interrupt, but we have a question if you're willing to take one or a comment.
Definitely.
Hi, Ahmed.
Definitely.
Sorry, was that only Canada?
Sorry?
Was that chart only for Canada?
Oh, this chart?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in Canada.
That's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, finally we have some stats for Canada because we're usually using American stats, but even that, look at that. This one country, so many reported hate crimes. And another thing is you're saying it's a law, right? Like as if you're surprised, which is interesting because you would think we would hear about these on the news, that we would be informed when hate crimes take place. But oftentimes we don't hear them in news outlets either, right? 349 events in 2017. I don't remember hearing it that many times. So again, it's who's responsible for telling our stories. It really matters. And it seems like we haven't had the best representation. So I want to take a minute to give you a nice example about how stories can be sort of flipped around to push a certain narrative about one person or one community. So I think we're all aware of Hurricane Katrina. And we have two news outlets, or no, the same news outlets reporting two stories, and they're virtually the same, but there's a very important difference in it that I'm hoping you will all be able to point out. So I'm just going to read the first one on top here. Is that a question in the chat?
No.
Okay. All right. So a young man walks through chest-deep flood water. Okay, that's a weird sentence. Okay, so chest-deep flood water after looting a grocery store in New Orleans on Tuesday, August 30th, 2005, the day of the flood, or the hurricane. So floodwaters continue to rise in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina did extensive damage. And then we have a picture below. And the headline says, 2 residents wade through chest-deep water after finding bread and soda from a local grocery store after Hurricane Katrina came through the area in New Orleans. And both of these news outlets headlines are about the same, but there's one or two differences. Can anyone sort of point them out? I think I hear something in the chat.
Yes, Elijah, I think you put your hand up.
Go ahead. Jump right in.
For the young black man, they said he looted the store, but for the two young white people, they said they found the things.
Yeah, and do you know what they're basing the difference on? Is there something different in the pictures or in the actions that would sort of support this?
It's just because the stereotype is that black people just steal everything, so
Exactly.
that they steal, so that's what they're basing that on.
Thank you. And thank you for being so upfront about that. Exactly. So there's no other difference, right, in the story. People are in chest deep water. They're waiting. They found food from a local grocery store. However, the black person over here is being identified as a looter. And the two white people underneath, they're just finding the bread and soda. They're just they're doing what they have to do to survive. So that is a good example of storytelling and how powerful it is. You have one black person on the top, and now they're representing their entire community in this one photo, and they're being shown in such a negative light, and it's all just based on stereotypes about black people. So two stories, same day, same event, but completely different storytelling. And that happens to Muslims oftentimes, right? So I want to talk about a solution to this. So we see stories about our communities, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Sikh, you're brown or you're black, there's these constant stories just going around and around, circulating, and just keeping us in this negative place, in this unempowered place. We're not able to really take back and talk about ourselves and talk about who we really are. So there's something called a counter narrative. I'm sure you came across this word before, but in this context or in this space, it talks about creating your own stories using your lived experiences. So again, your own actual experience is very important when you talk about when you create your own counter narrative, or when you take power in telling your own story. It's your experience because you're the Muslim. You're the expert, right? Because you are actually living as a Muslim in Canada. So what you experience is what we need to be hearing more of. And allowing a community to be the authority on their own experiences, their own beliefs and values. Some of you may be Shia, some of you may be Sunni, and all of your experiences are valid because that is what Islam is. It shows up in different ways, and Muslims are a variety of people, right? And then challenging systems and structures, finally, that perpetuate stereotypes about a community. And while challenging a system can feel very intimidating, especially as a student where you're in this constant power struggle with teachers, with administrators, you feel like you don't have enough of an influence, but you really do. The second you just start speaking, the second you just sort of take back the authority on a narrative, or whether you hear a peer saying a casual remark that's derogatory towards Muslims, the second you challenge that, you are inherently challenging structures, because you're challenging the culture in your school about how Muslims are spoken about. So I wanted to.
We have somebody who's their hand. Rayana, am I saying your name right? I apologize if I'm not.
Yeah, you are. One of our classmates just asked earlier that she was explaining the Sunni and Shafi differences to her classmates, and it was confusing and stuff. I just wanted to elaborate on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that is there's the four imams in our Muslim religion. There's Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Imam Ahmad. And all those four have went to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and have gathered hadith in knowledge on how to follow our religion properly. And they all have, some got more hadith, some got less hadith. And as we follow in Muslim is all four of those are correct. And we shall follow whichever one we think is correct. And if you see someone that is following a different one, like let's just say you're Sunni, and you see Shafi praying a different way, you are allowed to ask them that, oh, I think this is correct, but no way of praying is wrong. That's one thing I would say. And as we're speaking on talking about and like speaking up about Islamophobia and narratives that everyone is giving, there's also a hadith, like a narration called and said that actions are louder than words. See, I just want to list out of the 5 pillars of our Islam, like our religion, right? We have the Shahada, that we believe in God and Prophet Muhammad. And then we have fasting in Ramzan. We have charity, donations. And then we have Hajj. I think I missed one there, quite can't recall. But those are the 5 pillars. And see, if right now we just go in class, we sit down, no one really thinks differently. And if you approach someone just randomly and be like, oh, this is my religion, this is what I follow, they'll be like, what am I doing? But if you act on your religion, it might be the smallest thing, like saying Alhamdulillah loudly in class. They'll be like, oh, what is that? They'll be like, they'll get curious and they would want to know. And after that, when you give a explanation to them, that will touch them more in their heart and make them more curious to learn about Islam and change narratives upon you as you practice it in class, than just going up to them and be like, yo, this is just what I believe.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. I really thank you for sharing all of that. And that small things definitely make a difference. And I truly believe that comes from understanding who we are as individuals and being confident and having that pride to speak to it, right? And it might not come easy, and that's okay. That's okay. You're not expected to go and like advocate like for everyone and everything all at once, but small things make a difference. Like I said, teaching my students the word inshallah and what that meant, and allowing them, like you said, that once they understood it, how to use it, and like mashallah, it will, continue. So starting small, and absolutely being proud of who you are, but it's more important that we need to understand who we are, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'll pass it back to you, Janna.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that. And it brings up a lot of points. Like, for example, each of our experiences within our classrooms or at work, they're all going to look very differently. So where one of us may feel very confident in sharing, all the information about our religion and our practices, others might not get a chance. And that often is dependent on the culture of the space that we're in. So certain schools, they might not have a very accepting culture, and certain schools might be wide open, really ready for you to talk. So it's important. Please don't feel that pressure. Never compare your own, engagement, your own way of just being Muslim to how your other Muslim peers are doing it. Just always contextualize yourself within your own space, and remember. That's why storytelling is so important, right? Hear the stories about Muslims, hear what people are actually saying, and then start inserting yourself if you want to. Again, it's totally your own choice. But thank you again, for sharing the 5 pillars. It's so interesting. That's what we at NCCM do when we even give sessions to educators and staff and adults. We talk about the 5 pillars because it helps them understand that, oh, this is what Muslims do, on a daily or an annual basis. Like, this is what the faith is about. Makes it something that is able for them to understand better and not see Muslims as something so different. So thank you for both of you for sharing that. And I do want to share this video if we have time.
Is this the one that you want me to share?
Yeah, or we can do a follow-up on it. It's up to you. What do you think we're doing with time?
Whatever you want. It's a 3-minute. I have it ready to go if you want me to share it home.
Let me see. Okay, so we do have an activity coming up. So what I'm going to do is let's just share like a good 30 seconds of it.
Okay. Give me one. So I'm going to need you to stop sharing, my friend.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry.
That is, no. Stop sharing. There we go.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share. Hopefully you all will be able to hear it. So give me 1 second as I bring up. And any intro to this video, Janna, before I share it?
Yeah, so the only intro you need is this is an example of a counter narrative of Muslim identity.
Okay, so hopefully you guys should be able to hear this.
Muslim girl with the brilliance of many suns and the wisdom of many moons, where every phase is a better you. Look at the divine at work while they deny our worth. Prayer be woven fingers when we are triggered, then proceed to whisper scripture and strive higher than the brand of justice that was promised here in the in-between, here in the you can't hear yourself loud enough to hear your dreams. I know this system makes you nervous sometimes, but your nervous system was designed to feed your feeling, impulse through your pulse for healing. Your winter's withering in your bloom while holding on to their truth. Your blackness has always been in season.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we can also post the video in the chat, Ashley, so you can watch it on your own time. It's a great video, but it is quite long, and I do want to do a bit of talking on it. So Tamaj Garad is the singer that is, singer, songwriter, music producer. So she created that video about Black Muslim women. And one thing, again, I brought up a bit before, but I want to sort of touch on again is the intersectionality of identities, and how Tamaj is able to talk about, her Muslimness, her Blackness, her female identity, and put it all in one, right? So Muslims will show up in very different identities and different races. And this type of counter narrative and storytelling is showing someone affirming and celebrating their identity. You may have not been able to hear the lyrics very clearly, so I will look at a couple of quotes that I pulled from there and talk a little bit more about why I wanted to use that as an example. Let me share again. And let's go back to where we were. So, Sama, you can see the slide?
Yes, I gave you a thumbs up and realized you couldn't see me. Yes, we can.
One day they're going to give us more tech variety. One day. Thank you. So that video, you may have liked it, you may have not liked it, and that's completely fine because, again, our Muslim identities, they're going to show up differently. They're going to mean differently to different people. I want to talk about some of the lyrics and quotes that come out of that music video. So Tamaj says, "There is nothing tragic about you. The tragedy is living in the kind of world that brings you to the kind of grief that has you digging the earth with your teeth." So one thing she's doing is, again, it's important to sort of contextualize, realize who Tamaj is speaking to. And right now the audience to her is Black Muslim girls, right? And oftentimes tragedy and grief is linked to the identity of Blackness and also the identity of Muslimness. Anytime we see ourselves being represented in popular news and popular media, it's often in lieu of a tragedy, right? Like a Quebec mosque shooting or a protest from Black Lives Matter. But when do we really get to show up just as our identity, and that being enough, just Muslims, Muslims doing something very regular. We shouldn't always be involved in this narrative of tragedy or grief. So that's one thing she does, to take back the story, to offer a counter narrative. Another thing she says is, Black Muslim girls, you are more than magic. You are powerful. They can't even imagine. So one thing Tamaj does here is she's referencing Black girl magic, which is a phrase that came out, I think it's been around for a while. I'm not totally sure of its history, but it got very viral and popular, again, during Black Lives Matter. And it was a phrase that was sort of reclaiming, the positive side of just being a Black girl magic. Like we oftentimes, again, popular culture will attach very negative connotations to being black or to being a black girl. And black women were all around the world were taking that story back and revisiting it as a very powerful, positive thing. Black girl magic. Anytime you think of black girls, you think magic. You think something good instead of something negative. So that's what she's referencing here. And then she says, Black Muslim girl, with the brilliance of many suns and the wisdoms of many moons, where every phase is a better you. So again, just this affirmation of an identity, showing Black Muslim girls like, hey, you are inherently wise. You have many phases, to not depend on this singular story that other people are sort of pushing onto you. So I wanted to share this video and these quotes just to show you counter narrative in play. And what that sort of can look like in different ways. So I want to give maybe all of you a chance to write your own counter narrative. And this is a small activity, so don't worry. You can whip out a pen and paper if you want to. You can, use your mind if you don't need the pen and paper. But I have a couple of prompts on the right-hand side. Very short prompts: moon, rug, auditorium, shadow, and fork. And you're meant to choose a prompt from that list, any prompt you want. And then reflect on what liberation means to you. It doesn't have to be, it can be Muslim liberation. It would be good if it is, because it will just be part of the theme of what we're talking about. But what does it generally mean to you? What beliefs do you think you need to change within yourself, or maybe within your community, or maybe within society at a large, to make your version of liberation possible? And once you've sort of reflected on that, maybe, brainstorm on that, I'll give you some time to do that. Take what you've created from your reflection and use that prompt that you've been given and turn your reflection into a poem. All right. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to do that. It can be a short haiku. It can be a one-line sentence. That's fine. But as long as it takes your reflection of liberation and is able to represent that. And then share it with me. That is the last part. So I'll give you all a moment to do that. If you have any questions, if you want me to further clarify this activity, hop on the mic, jump in the chat. Otherwise, get started. I'm just going to look through the chat to see I'm not missing anyone. And I'm also conscious of time. We've had, I guess, a lot of really good conversations. So that's always great, but it means we are limited on time. So maybe after we share, we can do a quick wrap up, and then I will let you all go with some resources that you can use as, young Muslim leaders. Wow, that was so quick. Thank you, Elijah. I can read it out. So Elijah Lakeman says, we are not rugs to be walked on. We are not chairs for you to sit on. We are the people for you to talk to, live with, and respect. I really love that. Wow. Thank you so much.
So amazing. Wow.
How was that so quick and so, effective and deep at the same time? You are really good at this.
Janna, if you're still sharing, did you want to stop sharing if you weren't presenting anything?
Sure.
That way we can see all of our lovely faces here. That was great. Thank you so much, Elijah, for sharing that.
That is so good. Can we see that slide? Okay, let me share. No problem. Mm-hmm. There we go. So wow, Elijah, you really sort of took back, power. Like, you're supposed to talk to us, live with us, respect us, instead of walk all over us. I love the different things you brought up in your poem. Thank you. Did anyone have a comment on Elijah's poem, or Elijah yourself? Did you want to hop on and sort of maybe correct my understanding of it, or maybe talk more about it?
No, I think you understood it perfectly. That's what I meant it to be interpreted as.
Awesome. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
By the way, this makes me so happy. It makes me look forward to teaching so much. Anytime I give sessions like this and I have such a vibrant engagement coming back, I really can't wait to be around students and maybe teach them what inshallah means, like Miss Jadun.
Elijah, what school are you from? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm from Frenchman's Bay Public School, but I went to Sir John A for my grade 8 year, and now I go to Dumbarton.
Dumbarton High School. Okay, cool. Thank you.
How are we doing, people? Anyone else? Don't be shy. You don't want to know what my poem looked like. It was not great. We'll take one more. Any takers?
There's one actually. Did you see it in the chat?
Here, let me run back to the chat.
I can read it to you if you want.
That's okay. I'm here. All right, Michelle Ahmed. Liberation should look like the light of the moon, shining upon everyone. Shadows are not enough. You need the light to be reflected.
Wow. I know, these kids are amazing. And even above, Imad Zishan also wrote one if you scroll up one.
Imad says, we are the moons of not a dark twilight, but the moonlight of a new Ramadan's night. Look at you. There's symbolism here. There's metaphors here. Amazing. Michelle, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, just to kind of explain. So I think oftentimes when we see ourselves represented, it's not in a way that like is fully ourselves. So it's kind of like a shadow of us as being represented. So I thought kind of like, you know, the moon shedding the light on us when in a way that we can fully represent ourselves.
Amazing. And I think my favorite part is the last where it says we need the light to be reflected, right? You know, reflecting our own identities, reflecting ourselves. Amazing.
Imad, what school are you from? I know, Michelle, you're from Donald there. Okay, that's okay. You don't need to disclose that. All good.
I think he says Henry Street High School.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. The reason why I'm asking is I want to highlight your schools when we do a little bit of a posting. And if you're okay with it, we would love to share some of your poems too. If you all are okay with it. Okay. Snap, snap, snap. I love that. Oh, we have another one. Yes, Ramla. Do you see it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. This isn't really a poem, but here it is. My voice speaks volumes, even if you don't give me an auditorium to speak in. But shouldn't I also get a voice just as much as you and everyone else in the room? Liberation is learning, listening, and hearing the voice echo in the auditorium. We are not here to be left in the shadows, but to rather shine in the moonlight and all its glory. Snap, snap, snap. Amazing. You somehow like took a little bit of the themes from everyone else's poem and just like put it all together. That's such a nice summation. And it was very poem-like, so I definitely, it looks like a poem to me. Thank you so much. Is it okay if we do, sorry, who wants to speak? Go ahead. I heard a mic go on. Anyone, if you want to jump in, that's totally fine. Okay, maybe that was just me. But hopefully it is okay that we do sample your poems, or just maybe if I could just look at them on my own personally, because they're so deep and they're lovely examples of liberation. Sama, I think you're on, are you on mute? For some reason I can't hear you. Maybe I'm on mute.
No, I'm unable to hear Sima also.
Oh no. Sorry, Sima, I think there's some type of connection issue. You're good? Oh, okay. I didn't want to know what you were saying.
I was just wondering if anyone else is like me. Like I'm a teacher, so but I'm here trying to write my own, just for my own reflection. And if anybody else is like me and it takes a minute, I love literature and I love these types of activities. Excuse me, but sometimes it takes my brain, especially at 6 o'clock, to take some time. I'm wondering, Saima, too, if we can set up something where, you know, they can, if they still want to take some time to come up with a piece, that they could still send it so that we can highlight it and share it with Janna as well. But I know sometimes the brains turn off in the evening, so it might take some of us a little bit longer, but I'm just wondering, so that we can hear anybody else's that would like to share. Maybe there's something we can put on the Google Classroom or something like that, so we can get those pieces in.
Can you all hear me now? No?
Perfect.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, so first and foremost, yes, absolutely, Miss Nabi, we're going to be doing that. My next thing was I wanted to give a shout out because I know there's a lot of grade 7s and 8 students here as well. And Ramla, I believe you're a grade 8 student in one of my family of schools. And it's so nice to see these intermediate students speak up and step up and also interact and collaborate with their other peers in high school. So thank you for that. And yes, as Miss Nabi said, so what I would like to do, and I see Jamil also posted one, liberation for me is being equal. We're all different and special, just like the 8 phases of the moon. That's beautiful. And what I'm going to do right now, if you all are okay with it, is I'm going to very quickly, yes, we will be sharing these on our Insta and on our Twitter. Miss Nabi runs our men Twitter and I run our Instagram page. But I'm going to post something right now, and that is a link to our MEND Ambassador, Student Ambassador Google Classroom. Some of you may already be on it, and that's fantastic. But if you're not, we welcome you to join. Here, we're going to be posting not only the link from today's recording, but also links to the video that Janna had shown. Miss Nabi was asking about that. And what I'll do is I'll create an assignment that says poetry. So if you want to, you can then submit and we can create a nice little graphic of your poetry with your name on it and your school's name on it, because we would love to highlight your school as well and post it over the next week or two. So please, please, please make sure you join that Google Classroom. I put the link in the chat right now. And thank you all for sharing. I know we're running out of time. And it's past. We were thinking 40 minutes, but we're way over an hour. I want to personally thank Janna from NCCM for taking time and sharing not only her knowledge, but her experiences and helping us learn how we can take pride in who we are as Muslim students, as individuals who support Muslim students, because we know there's a lot of people here who may not be Muslim, but we're here to support as allies, or they are here to support us as allies. And we really appreciate not only the information you shared, but the opportunity to connect and collaborate. And we hope we can work with you again soon. And like what came out of 1 hour is unreal. The fact that I see kids from grade 7 and 8 from Walter E. Harris Public School, from Romeo Dallaire, from Dunbarton, from Donald A. Wilson. We actually have almost one representation from every high school and many elementary. So I'm so thankful. And we thank you all for joining us and for being so engaging. And I thank you, Janna, for creating that space for us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't reiterate it enough how amazing I find these young Muslim ambassadors, this group you've assembled. But thank you, Saima, for being such a great representation and such a high level for us Muslims. And for the allies who have showed up, I hope you felt like I was speaking to you as well. I hope you felt included. Thank you for being here, especially Miss Nabi. Thank you so much.
Yes, shout out to Miss Nabi, all the way from Walter E. Harris. Thank you again. I am going to be posting stuff, but
on the chat.
Classroom.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going to throw my email in the chat. If you want to email me with anything, just look at NCCM as a resource for you students and also educators as well. Reach out with any type of a problem, experience, anything you want to share. And I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for sharing your evening with me. I wish you all the best in your education life, guys. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so
Assalamu
much.
alaikum.
Bye.
Bye, Fatiha.
Elijah, you had a question, my friend?
Assalamu alaikum.
I have a question. So I'm an ally for this, so would I still be allowed to join the Google Classroom?
Absolutely. That's what I said. Whether you're here as a Muslim student or somebody who is here as an ally, absolutely. We value your voice. It matters.
Okay, thank you.
And such a great poem coming from an ally. Thank you, Elijah. Amazing. All right. As much as I want to stay here because you guys are such a great group, I'm going to have to head out. All right. Perfect. Saima, again, thank you so much. Salam, everyone.
Saima, your mic. There's just some questions here about